Hello, this is Stitchy Witchy Bee. I'm Bee. My pronouns are she, her. Today is July 1st. Welcome and thank you very much for stopping by. This is a channel about and for cross stitching. I'm going to be going over my works in progress or WIPs for the month of June, and after I will be discussing my overall progress on my monthly goals before leading into plans for July. You can probably hear my AC in the background. I'm not sorry, it will be staying on and hopefully it isn't too distracting. The temperatures today are right around 90, 91, but the real feel is 107. So even just having it off for a few minutes would be pretty rough, so it will be staying on. To remind return friends and let new ones know, I started out the year with 109 projects. I'm working on 9 a month to get a little bit of stitching on every single one. Trying to get a minimum of 500 stitches on each. Of those 9, I focus on finishing at least 3 a month and put in ideally 1,000 stitches, but minimum 500 on one of my extra large projects, which are any of the projects I have that have over 50,000 total stitches. I'm also participating in a modified version of WipGo, so 2 of my 9 projects will align with the numbers drawn each month by Jessie Marie Does Stuff. In the past, I tried to make those separate from my other projects each month to really make sure I was getting to all of my WIPs, but I'm at the point in the year where I can maybe try to apply the prompts to my finishes or extra large projects if they can fit. For June and for July, I will still be doing 9, but it really could go either way going forward. And then, okay, so let's talk about June. The first finish that I did was this mushroom book by White Protea Art. I completed this on an 18 count shadow by Picture This Plus using the called for DMC. This was a restart. I initially did it on kind of an oatmeal fabric that most of the colors just completely disappeared into. I did enjoy working on this, but I will also admit a lot of the colors were extremely similar in here, or like very close to each other by only a shade or 2 off. And I have a really hard time differentiating them. I know that there is a difference, and like if I put them right next to each other, like the full skein specifically right next to each other, I can see the difference. But when it's just 1 or 2 strands, I have a much harder time telling that there is something different going on with the colors. So this was a little bit frustrating because there were a ton of color changes and I can't personally tell very well, but I think other people would be able to. That's a me issue and not a design issue or a color issue by the pattern maker. I also finished Strawberry Fields by the Artsy Housewife. This was done on an 18 count cream and sugar by Fiber on a Whim. And I think I used the called for, or mostly the called for. I know at one point I made a few changes, but then when I resumed working on it, I think I went back to the original DMC. I'm not 100% sure. I know one color I did absolutely change, so I will mention that in a moment. But I had a lot of it done already. I mostly needed to do the strawberries and then the flowers, and I think this side of these leaves. But everything else was done when I started working on it this month. The only thing I did not do was add the insides of the flowers because I changed the color of the flowers. I think it was Punchberry by Gentle Arts, possibly. Because I changed this color because I didn't have the called for. The called for inside colors just weren't really going very well with it, and I just decided I liked it better without anything there at all. And I stand by that. I really like the way this looks. And then my third finish for the month was Vampire by Create Your Desire. I did this on 20 count Banshee by Bestitch Me using the called for. And I'll be incredibly honest, this pattern just about did me in. I was totally fine working on her and her hair. But a lot of these flowers and kind of the bits on the side were, for whatever reason, so draining and so frustrating for me to do. I was just having a rough time with them. At one point I was like, do I even want to finish this? I hit that wall pretty early on in the month. One thing that helped, I worked on it during lunch breaks at work. So that gave me like a really narrow time, gave me a little bit of an easier time just focusing in on it during that hour. And helped get through a lot of the stitches that way. I do love it now that it's done. It was just working on it was a lot. And bear with me while I grab my next few projects. Alright, the WIPCO numbers for June were 21 and 12, which for me were something horror themed, and a pattern by Tinsel Cross Stitch. I worked on Leshy by the Witchy Stitcher for the first, and then Palestinian Ornament for the pattern by Tinsel Cross Stitch. Leshy is on 20 Count Space Rock by Bestitch Me. I'm using Sulky for the black so that it stands out a little bit better than sometimes DMC 310 can. And then Palestinian Ornament, I will still leave the fabric a little folded up, so apologies about that. There it is. This is a 32 count gray sand by XJU Design. I'm doing it, I believe, one strand over two. Again, using just the called for DMC. And I got a minimum of 500 stitches in on both. So I went ahead and crossed them off of my board, which I will show on the screen here. And then for my extra large project for the month, I worked on Halloween at Hawk Run Hollow by Carriage House Samplings. I'm doing this on an 18 count What the Hay by Bestitch Me. I started with the last square of all of them because this is the one that's kind of full coverage. This month I focused on the skeletons. Oh good, they are showing up. I wasn't sure if they would. I focused on the skeletons and the worms, so that all I have left to do now is that fill-in, that background fill-in color. The skeletons and worms alone got me up to just over 1,000 stitches, and I think I was starting about here. I had done this small section prior, so all of the other background here is also new in addition to these two and all of these worms. I also made progress on Pipevine Swallowtail. This is a restart on 25 count white hardanger. I'm doing it on the same piece that I restarted Common Buckeye on. They will both fit. And this is just using the called for DMC. This is a Carolyn Manning pattern, or they both are. It was very fun. I don't know what it is. I've discovered that I love doing Carolyn Mannings on a 25 count. There's just something really, really nice about that. I also restarted Witch's Sampler by Contrary Peri. I restarted it. Well, the fabric is the same. I changed the floss I was using. Sorry, I'm wrangling with it a little bit. This is 18 count Cream and Sugar by Fiber on a Whim again. I got a good bit of progress in on the letters, and I am using, simply because I had it, I was testing out some different blacks by hand dyers. I'm using Simply Shaker's Black Licorice for the lettering and a few other parts of this pattern. And then I also got a fair bit of progress in on another artsy housewife pattern, which will not show up entirely. This is Within a Dream. I'm doing this on 16 count Ren. And I came in, I did a bit more up here at the top with these designs, and I finished this specific part of these side designs here along with the leaves. But yeah, mostly I was kind of working on this bit at the top to see what this would look like all filled in eventually. Okay, I'm going to try to get through this quickly. The light is changing rapidly. Let's see. Okay, so because we're at the mid-year point, I did want to go over some stats really quick. I know a lot of people, this isn't really their favorite thing. I do try to put chapters in, and it shouldn't take very long, so feel free to skip ahead if you are not interested. It's just interesting for me to see if there's any patterns in my stitching, any fluctuations. Yeah. So out of the 109 projects I started the year with, I will be going into July with 86. That does include the 4 new projects I've started since the beginning of this calendar year. I have a little over 93,000 stitches for the year so far, which is very ahead of where I was last year. I'm currently averaging a little over 15,000 stitches a month, in large part because of January. January was insane. I will never have a month like that again, I am sure, and I am okay with that. It balanced out my really low number of stitches from March. The only month I haven't been able to fully meet all of my goals was March. I did not get any finishes done that month, but I had enough of a buffer in the year that it won't affect how many I do for the whole year. Otherwise, I've been able to stitch at least a little bit every day, even if it's only, 20, 30 stitches. And I've gotten a minimum of 500 stitches on every project that I've worked on each month. I am still on target to have worked on all of them by the end of the year and to continue working my way through my list of hopeful finishes. As of right now, I have confirmed plans to start 1 new project in October with a friend, and I have vague plans to maybe start 1 or 2 more before the end of the year for myself. I don't have anything decided for certain on those yet, especially not when. But as long as I can keep my total number of new projects for the year below 10, I'm going to be extremely happy with myself. And now we are going to go into July. Let's see. For the WIPGO choices this month, they were 17 and 9, which for me is something media-based and then something with Quaker designs. For the media-based pattern, I chose Hellboy by the Witchy Stitcher. I have barely anything done on this so far, so 500 stitches will make a big impact. And then for a Quaker, I ended up choosing Quaker Spirit by Tinsel Cross Stitch because of the colors involved, and I will need a piece of white paper for this, I think, just to get the full impact, because this is, not showing up at all correctly. One moment. Okay, we'll see if this helps. Not quite. It's a lot more pink than showing up. That's a little bit closer, but still it's not really doing this justice. And as usual, I will give more details on the floss and fabric when I'm actually discussing them properly at the end of the month. My extra large project for the month will be Mischief and Repose, which is based on artwork by John William Godward and was converted into a pattern by Diana70 on Etsy. I had been doing this on 18 count white Ada, but this will surprise no one that is a returner. Will probably only surprise new people. I did restart it just today. I know. But I wanted to enjoy working on it. So I restarted it on 25 count. There's just something about a full coverage pattern on 25 count that I love. And I'm doing a top right corner this time. I was also only 1,000 stitches in to begin with, so it wasn't really going back that far. as far as I'm concerned. It is just a white 25 count Hardinger. And then my 3 finishes for the month. Oh, let me crinkle off camera one moment. Okay. My 3 finishes for the month will be Christmas Ball number 2 by xCrossStitchPatternsx. Which, whoops. Here's where that progress will be starting. And then there is a swear word here, so apologies if there's easily offendable ears. This one is Fuck Around and Find Out by Witch's Garden Crafts. I believe, yes. And then Welcome to the Crypt by the Witchy Stitcher, which I only had maybe 20 stitches in on. It was on linen, so I will be restarting that. I'm not sure on what yet, but I'm not too worried. I have plenty of options that I think will look amazing with it. So possibly Smog. I have a bunch. I'm not too worried. And then for my final 3 projects, just, you know, anything goes on those. I will be working on Great White Christmas by Boomerang Stitches. I thought about using this as my media related option, but did decide to go ahead and do a full 9 instead of the double dipping. This is what I've got so far. So 500 stitches will have a big impact, and that's also not showing up very well. That's better. And then I will also be doing Halloween Garden by Buena Pieza. I only have a very tiny start on this, I believe. Yep. It won't be super visible, but I kind of really like it. That's all I've got so far is a bit in this corner. And then a Ouija board by Raven Stitchcraft. Love this. Love this one. It's going to be absolutely stunning when it's done. There's only a tiny bit left at the bottom, but you've got most of it on screen there. And that's all 9 for July. I was really glad that I changed my plans for the month of June and, you know, the next couple of months. I mentioned in my last video I started a new job on June 1st. It is going very well. The transition has been a doozy though. There's a ton of information to learn. I won't go into too much detail about it, but it's for a software company and I will be working in support, which means that I need to learn the software first so that I can help people with whatever their issue is for it. And there have been a couple days where it feels like my brain is just melting out of my ears, but I'm really enjoying it. I am getting along really well with my coworkers so far. It's a great environment. But I don't think I could have done anything more intensive in terms of my stitching than what I'm currently set up to do. So now, I've been able to get back into reading a little bit, and I thought about talking about some of what I've been reading. I even wrote up a little bit about a couple of them, but honestly, it was very rambly. I wasn't able to get my thoughts together very well. I will give just extremely limited synopsis of one of them because it was a very good read. It was The Duke by Anna Cowan, which was a sapphic historical romance. It was, I consider it a little bit of almost like an alternate history sort of a situation because the Duke character and a few other women in the British elite in this go by the masculine version of their title. So it is Duke, Marquis, Earl, but they're women. And so and there isn't really any, like, oh, it's because of this, and there's all this. No, it's just, it is what it is. And I really liked that about it. Plus, just the story was very delightful. It wasn't overly spicy. Like, there was a little bit, but it was more, I considered it a little bit more kind of euphemistic or vague. But it was very well written. The story itself was fantastic. I think I read it in a day, maybe a day and a half, because I was just so into it. It was so well written. And the other things I've been reading that would cause me to rant, I'm not going to get into it. I'm rereading something from childhood, or not childhood, late teens, early 20s, and it's a trip. But that's been kind of consuming most of my reading. And then I've also been playing a bit of Coral Island. If you are familiar with Stardew Valley at all, Coral Island is kind of similar in that there's a farm. You're kind of leaving the big city to come and run this farm. There's optional combat, other similar things. There's a lot of collecting of, foraging plants. You have your own animals, stuff like that. But there are some things that make it really unique too. And I've really been enjoying it so far. It's been perfect for shutting my brain off after a day full of classes and phone shadowing. Yeah, and that's kind of it. I haven't really been doing much. I wanted to watch some movies this month, but it just never really got around to it, and that's perfectly fine. But that's it. I'm rambling now, so I will finish up. That's it for this video. Thank you if you stuck around. I appreciate you. I will see you all in a month, friends. And in the meantime, try to remember to get enough water, stay safe, take your meds if you need to, and focus on what makes you happy. I'll see you all next time.